The stars had always been silent. To the Varelian Empire, they were symbols of order, points of light mapped, categorized, and controlled. For over 10,000 cycles, the Varelians had spread across their quadrant of the galaxy, bringing structure to chaos, unity to fragmentation, and dominance to any species that dared resist. They believed themselves to be the final evolution of civilization. They were wrong. It began with a signal, not a declaration of war, not a plea for help, just a single transmission, repeating endlessly from the edge of Varelian space. A human voice. I am still here. At first, the Empire dismissed it. Humans were new, reckless, emotional, unpredictable. They had expanded rapidly, yes, but like all young species, they would either mature under Varelian guidance or be erased. Most assumed the signal was a remnant, a lost ship, a dying man clinging to hope. But the signal didn't fade. It didn't weaken. And it didn't stop. High Commander Threxel stood in the Grand Command Chamber of the Varelian flagship Eclipse Sovereign, watching the projection of the signal's origin. A single point in the void. No energy signatures, one of his officers reported. No fleet presence. No active colonies. Just the signal, another added. Threxel's eyes narrowed. How long has it persisted? 17 standard cycles. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Impossible. No human vessel could sustain a broadcast for that long without resupply. Threxel made his decision. Prepare a reconnaissance fleet, he ordered. We will investigate personally. 3 days later, the fleet arrived. Dozens of Varelian warships dropped out of hyperspace, their sleek forms shimmering with energy shields and weapon arrays capable of reducing planets to ash. And there, drifting in the void, was a human ship. Small, scarred, barely functional. Its hull was blackened, sections missing, systems clearly damaged beyond repair. And yet, it was still broadcasting. I am still here. Threxel felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Curiosity. Open a channel, he commanded. Static filled the comms. Then, slowly, a face appeared. Human. Male. Exhausted. But alive. This is High Commander Threxel of the Varelian Empire, he said. Identify yourself. The human stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he spoke. Name's Elias Kane, he said, his voice rough but steady. Took you long enough. The officers around Threxel bristled at the tone. You address a high commander. Threxel raised a hand, silencing them. You have been broadcasting for 17 cycles, he said. Why? Elias leaned back slightly, as if the question amused him. To make sure someone heard me. You are heard, Threxel replied. Now explain. Elias's gaze hardened. They're coming. A familiar phrase. One the Varelians had heard therefore, from weaker species, from desperate civilizations on the brink of collapse. They always say that, one officer muttered. Threxel ignored him. Who is coming, he asked. Elias shook his head. You don't understand, he said. It's not a who. A pause. It's a what. The data Elias transmitted over the next hour was unsettling. Unidentified entities. Not ships in the traditional sense. Not biological organisms. Something else. Something that consumed. Entire human colonies had vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. No debris. No survivors. No trace. Just gone. And you fought this? Threxel asked. Elias gave a humorless smile. Yeah, he said. We tried. And Elias's silence was answer enough. Why are you still here? Threxel asked. Elias looked out at the stars through his cracked viewport. Because someone had to stay behind, he said. To do what? Elias turned back to him. To slow them down. The chamber went silent. With that, one officer scoffed. gesturing to the damaged ship. Elias shrugged. "It's not about the ship," he said. "Then what is it about?" Threxel pressed. Elias met his gaze. Time. The first attack came, without warning. Varelian sensors lit up with anomalies, distortions in space itself. "Contacts," an officer shouted. "Multiple, no, hundreds." They appeared like shadows tearing through reality. Massive, shifting forms that defied classification. Weapons locked on instantly. Fire. The Varelian fleet unleashed its full power. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the incoming entities. For a moment it worked, then the entities adapted. Their forms shifted, absorbing the energy, redirecting it. The Varelian ships faltered. "What are they doing?" an officer gasped. "Learning." Elias's voice came through the comms. Chaos erupted. The entities moved unpredictably, ignoring traditional battle formations. They didn't attack in waves. They didn't follow patterns. They simply advanced. Relentless. Unstoppable. Shields failing, one ship reported. Weapon systems ineffective. "Commander." "Hold formation," Threxel ordered. But it was already breaking. The Varelians were precise, disciplined. They relied on order. And, against this, order was a weakness. Then something unexpected happened. The human ship moved. Not towards safety. Not away from danger. But straight into the heart of the enemy. "What is he doing?" an officer shouted. "Human vessel, withdraw." Threxel commanded. Elias didn't respond. Instead, his ship accelerated. Engines screaming, systems barely holding together. He flew directly into the swarm. "Track his trajectory," Threxel ordered. "It's erratic. He's not following any logical path." Elias weaved through the entities, drawing their attention, luring them, provoking them. "He's dividing them," Threxel realized. "But that's suicide," an officer protested. "Yes," Threxel said quietly. "It is." Inside his ship, Elias worked with practiced precision. Every movement calculated. Every decision immediate. He didn't have the luxury of perfect plans. Only the instinct to survive and the will to keep going. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Follow me." The entities did, like predators sensing prey. But Elias wasn't running. He was leading them. "Commander," an officer said, "the human is drawing a significant portion of the enemy away from the fleet." Threxel watched the projections. "He's creating an opening," he said. "For what?" Threxel's eyes narrowed. "For us." "Fleet," Threxel commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Break formation." The officers hesitated. "Commander?" "Do it," he repeated. The Varelian ship scattered, abandoning their rigid structure. It felt wrong, unnatural, but it worked. Freed from their constraints, they began to adapt, to move, to react, just as the human had. The battle shifted, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. The Varelians began to push back, and at the center of it all was one human, fighting alone. Hours passed. Ships were lost. Systems failed, but the line held. And then the entities began to retreat. Not in panic, not in defeat, but in calculation. They withdrew into the void from which they came. The battlefield fell silent. "Status report," Threxel ordered. "Fleet heavily damaged," an officer replied. "Multiple losses. But we're still operational." Threxel nodded. "And the human?" Silence. They found him drifting. His ship was barely intact. Power levels critical. Life support failing. But he was still alive. Still breathing. Still there. Elias opened his eyes as the Varelian boarding team entered his ship. "You're late," he muttered weakly. Threxel himself stepped forward. "You fought alone," he said. Elias gave a faint smile. Not alone, he said. You showed up. Back aboard the Eclipse Sovereign, Elias was placed in a medical chamber. Varelian technology worked quickly, stabilizing his condition. Threxel stood nearby, watching. You knew you couldn't win, he said. Elias glanced at him. Yeah, he admitted. Then why fight? Elias's expression was calm. Because losing slowly is better than losing fast. Threxel considered that. It was not a Varelian philosophy. They believed in victory, in dominance, in perfection, not endurance. You changed the battle, Threxel said. Elias shrugged slightly. You adapted, he replied. We learned from you. Elias smirked faintly. Took you long enough. Days later, as repairs began and strategies were reassessed, Threxel addressed his fleet. We encountered an enemy unlike any we have faced, he said. And we survived because of a single human. Murmurs spread through the ranks. He fought alone, Threxel continued. Not for victory, but for time. A pause. And in doing so, he gave us both. Elias stood beside him, still recovering but upright. The Varelian officers looked at him differently now. Not with amusement. Not with dismissal, but with respect. You are reckless, Threxel said to him privately. Elias chuckled. Yeah, we get that a lot. You risked everything. Elias met his gaze. So did you. The war was far from over. The entities would return. Stronger. Smarter. But now, the Varelians were ready. Not because of their power, but because they had learned something new. They had learned how to fight like humans. And at the center of it all was the man who had stood alone against the stars and refused to disappear.